Captain Dae-jin stood on the observation deck of Aegis 7, staring at the impossible sight before him. The stars were disappearing. Not fading, not dimming, simply vanishing behind something massive that blocked out the light. "Sir, we're reading over 300 objects entering Earth's orbit," his sensor officer reported. Her voice shook slightly. They're enormous. Dae-jin had commanded the orbital defense platform for 6 years. He had trained for asteroid impacts, rogue satellites, even terrorist attacks. He had never trained for this. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though something about it sounded wrong. Too smooth. Too wet. "Humans of Earth. We are the Virnath. We have observed your species for 2 of your years. You are weak. You feel too much. You cry for your dead. You hesitate in battle. Your emotions make you inferior." Dae-jin felt his chest tighten. Around him, his crew of 47 men and women stood frozen. "We will remove you from this galaxy," the voice continued. "Your world will burn. Your colonies will fall. We do this not from hatred, but from necessity. Weak species must make room for the strong. Do not resist. It will only make your suffering longer." The transmission ended. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then every alarm on the platform began screaming at once. Dae-jin grabbed his command chair. "Battle stations. All weapons hot. Get me a line to Fleet Admiral Ji-woo now." "Ah. Wud. Ah." The first energy beams cut through the darkness like red lightning. They slammed into Earth's atmosphere, carving glowing wounds across the sky. Even from orbit, Dae-jin could see cities beginning to burn. "Sir, Admiral Ji-woo is on the line." The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. She looked calm, but Dae-jin could see the fear in her eyes. Behind her, he could hear people shouting, alarms blaring. "Dae-jin, we're outnumbered 10-1, Ji-woo said. "Maybe worse. I'm ordering all defense platforms to fire at will. Target anything that moves. Buy us time to evacuate who we can." "Understood, Admiral." Dae-jin turned to his weapons officer. "Fire everything we have." Aegis 7 shuddered as it launched its full arsenal. Missiles streaked toward the alien ships. Railgun rounds followed, moving at a fraction of light speed. For a moment, Dae-jin felt hope as he saw 3 alien vessels explode in brilliant flashes. Then 100 more appeared behind them. Down on Earth, in the underground research facility beneath Geneva, Dr. Hana Choi watched her life's work coming apart. Alarms screamed through the halls. Red emergency lights painted everything the color of blood. "Doctor, we need to evacuate," her assistant shouted over the noise. Hana shook her head. She was 42 years old and had spent the last 15 years developing faster-than-light travel. She was so close. 6 months, maybe less, and humanity would have had the ability to reach distant stars in days instead of decades. 6 months they didn't have. "I'm uploading everything to the colony servers," she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "Mars, Titan, Europa, they need this research. If Earth falls, maybe they can finish it." The building shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere above them, something exploded. "Hana, we have to go now." She hit the final key. The upload progress bar appeared. 47%. 48%. 49%. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in. But it was weaker. Dimmer. 500 500 500. Another explosion, closer this time. The monitor flickered. 500 500 500. Come on. 100%. Upload complete. She grabbed her bag and ran. In Seoul, Young Ho held his daughter tight as the windows exploded inward. Glass flew like deadly rain. He threw himself over her, felt the shards cut into his back. His wife screamed his name. "Get to the shelter!" he shouted. "Now!" They ran through their apartment, past family photos on the walls, past the kitchen where they'd eaten breakfast just that morning. Everything seemed so normal, so impossible that this could be happening. The building shook again. Young Ho heard the sound of concrete cracking, metal twisting. They reached the stairwell, just as the wall behind them collapsed. Down and down they went, following the emergency lights. Around them, their neighbors ran too. Old Mr. Kwan from 4B, the young couple from 2C, who'd just had a baby. Everyone heading down to the underground shelters that the government had built decades ago, back when nuclear war seemed like the biggest threat humanity could face. Young Ho never thought they'd actually need them. They reached the shelter. Massive steel doors stood open, and soldiers waved people through. Young Ho could see hundreds of faces inside, all turned toward the entrance, all showing the same expression. Pure terror. "Hurry! Move! Move!" a soldier shouted. Young Ho ran forward, his wife beside him, his daughter in his arms. 10 more steps. 5 more steps. The ceiling came down. He remembered seeing concrete and steel falling. He remembered pushing his daughter forward, toward the shelter doors. He remembered his wife's hand slipping from his. Then everything went white, and the world ended. On Aegis 7, Daejin watched his platform die. Half his crew was already gone. Fires burned in 3 sections. Life support was failing. "Sir, we've lost all weapons," someone shouted. "We're defenseless." An alien ship, massive and dark, moved toward them. It was shaped like a knife blade, all sharp angles and cruel curves. Daejin could see weapons charging along its hull, glowing bright red. "All hands, abandon station," he ordered. "Get to the escape pods now." His crew didn't argue. They ran. Daejin waited until everyone else was gone. He stood alone on the command deck, watching through the cracked windows as Earth burned below. He could see the continents outlined in fire. Clouds of ash were already spreading across the atmosphere. 4 billion people down there, maybe more, all dying while he watched. The alien ship fired. Daejin ran. He reached the last escape pod, threw himself inside, and slammed the emergency launch. The pod shot away from Aegis 7. Just as the platform exploded behind him, he tumbled through space, watching the debris scatter. All around him, Earth's orbital defenses were dying. Stations exploded. Ships broke apart. Fighters spun away, trailing fire, and Earth kept burning. Daejin's pod had no propulsion, just life support and a distress beacon. He would drift here until someone found him. If anyone survived, to look. He pressed his hand against the small window, staring at the planet below. At his home. At everything humanity had built over 10,000 years of civilization. The Virnath thought this would break them. They thought humans would weep and surrender. They thought emotion was weakness. "You have no idea what you've done," Daejin whispered to the alien ships. "You think we'll mourn. You think we'll cry and give up." Below him, another city died in nuclear fire. "You've made a mistake," he said. "You showed us that mercy is optional. You showed us that the universe doesn't care about fairness. You showed us that sometimes survival means becoming what you fear." His pod slowly tumbled, turning him away from Earth. In the distance, he could see the lights of Mars, where some of humanity's colonies still survived. "We won't weep," Daejin said. "We'll adapt. We'll learn. We'll build." He closed his eyes, but the image of burning Earth was already burned into his mind forever. "And then we'll erase you from existence." 5 years had changed everything. Daejin stood in the command center buried deep under Mars Colony 3. The room hummed with quiet efficiency. Dozens of officers worked at their stations, monitoring screens, coordinating fleet movements, planning operations. Nobody spoke loudly. Nobody wasted time with unnecessary conversation. The survivors had learned to be cold. "General Kim, Dr. Choi is here for your 0800 briefing," an aide said. Daejin nodded. He still wasn't used to his new rank. After they'd pulled him from his escape pod 3 weeks after the attack, half dead from oxygen deprivation. Fleet Admiral Ji Woo had promoted him on the spot. "You survived," she'd said. "That makes you one of our best resources." Now he commanded special operations for what remained of humanity. Hana entered the room carrying a tablet. She looked different from the woman who'd worked in Geneva. Thinner, harder. Her hair, once long, was now cut military short. She wore a gray uniform, like everyone else. "We've completed the final tests on the quantum displacement drive," she said without preamble. "It works. We can move ships in and out of normal space at will." "Better than Virnoth technology?" Dae-jin asked. "Much better. They use brute force, FTL. Lots of energy, lots of noise, and everyone can see them coming. Our system is quiet. We can appear right next to a target, fire, and vanish before they know we're there." Dae-jin allowed himself a thin smile. It was the closest thing to emotion he'd shown in months. "How many ships can we equip?" 300, maybe 350, if we push production. We've converted Mars's industrial capacity entirely to military production. Same with Titan. Europa's ice mining operations are now feeding coolant systems for weapon arrays. Timeline? 18 months for full deployment. Dae-jin nodded. "Then we start in 18 months. Hana leaned forward. "Dae-jin, we've also been studying Virnoth biology, from the bodies we recovered. They're telepathic. Yes, but it's more than that. They share emotions across their entire species. Every Virnoth can feel what others feel. And that helps us how? It means, when one dies, they all feel it. When one experiences fear, they all experience it. It's a network." Hana's eyes were cold. "Networks can be exploited." In the training complex on the other side of Mars Colony, Sung-min pulled his fighter into a vertical climb, felt the G-forces crush him into his seat, and fired on his third target in as many seconds. All 3 kills, all perfect shots. Time, 4.3 seconds, the computer announced. New personal record. Sung-min didn't celebrate. He reset the simulation and started again. He was 22 years old. When Earth burned, he'd been 17. A student pilot in the academy. His parents, his sister, his girlfriend, all gone in the first hour of the attack. He'd been on a training flight above the atmosphere when it happened. He'd watched his home burn and hadn't been able to do anything about it. Now he could do something about it. The simulation loaded. Enemy ships appeared on his sensors. Sung-min's hands moved across the controls, like a pianist playing a familiar piece. Roll, target, fire, pitch, target, fire. The movements were automatic now. Burned into his muscle memory through thousands of hours of practice. Time, 3.9 seconds. Better, but not good enough. The Virnoth had killed 4 billion humans in 72 hours. That was 55 million people per hour. 900,000 per minute. 15,000 per second. He needed to be faster. The simulation reset. He tried again. In the intelligence wing, Young-ho stared at the Virnoth communication intercept on his screen. After Seoul fell, after the building came down on him, he'd woken up in an emergency medical ship 3 days later. His daughter had made it into the shelter. His wife had not. They'd offered him therapy, counseling, support groups for survivors. He'd refused all of it. Instead, he'd volunteered for intelligence work. They'd discovered he had a gift for languages, for patterns, for seeing connections others missed. Now he was one of humanity's top analysts on Virnoth behavior. "The transmission is from their outer colonies," he said to the officer beside him. "They're requesting more troops. They think some of their outposts are experiencing technical failures." "Technical failures?" Young-ho smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. 12 Virnoth monitoring stations have gone silent in the past month. They think it's equipment problems. They don't realize we've been sending teams. We have teams operating in Virnoth space already? Small groups, very quiet. They watch, They learn. They eliminate targets when possible. And they disappear. The Virnath don't even know they're being attacked. They just think they're having bad luck. Young-ho pulled up another file. I've also mapped their breeding colonies. Virnath reproduce slowly, only about 3 offspring per couple. And they only breed every 15 years. Their total population across all their worlds is maybe 20 billion. That's small for an empire spanning 47 star systems. Yes, which means if we target the breeding colonies first. Young-ho let the thought hang in the air. The officer beside him went pale. That's genocide. Young-ho looked at him. They killed 4 billion of us in 3 days. They burned our world. They didn't ask for surrender. They didn't offer terms. They just decided we should die. He turned back to his screen. I'm not interested in fairness. I'm interested in making sure they can never do to anyone else what they did to us. In the Supreme Command Center, Admiral Ji-woo reviewed the reports from all departments. She was 61 now. And she'd aged another 10 years in the 5 since Earth fell. Her hair was completely white, lines carved deep into her face. But her eyes were sharp as ever. Production is ahead of schedule, her logistics officer reported. We'll have our full fleet operational in 16 months instead of 18. Training? Pilots are exceeding all projections. So are ground forces. The new soldiers. They're different from before. Harder. More focused. Ji-woo nodded. She knew what he meant. The survivors didn't train like soldiers. They trained like machines. No complaints. No breaks, unless ordered. Some worked until they collapsed and had to be forced to rest. They'd lost the ability to care about themselves. All that mattered was the mission. And Dr. Choi's weapons development? Ahead of schedule. The quantum displacement drives work perfectly. She's also developed something new. She calls it a gravity lance. It can crush a ship from the inside by creating a localized gravity well. Very efficient. Very clean. How clean? No wreckage. The ship just collapses into itself until it's roughly the size of a basketball. Crew included. Ji-woo closed her eyes for a moment. Before Earth burned, she would have been horrified by such a weapon. Now she just asked, how many can we produce? Enough to equip every ship in the fleet. Do it. Later, alone in her quarters, Ji-woo allowed herself to think about what they were planning. Total extinction of the Virnath species. Every man, woman, and child. Every world burned clean. Their entire civilization erased from existence, as if they'd never been. It should have bothered her. She should have felt guilt, or at least doubt. She felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The Virnath had made a calculation error. They'd looked at humanity's compassion, our art, our literature, our endless debates about ethics and morality, and they'd seen weakness. They'd thought a species that cried at sad movies would be easy to destroy. They'd never considered what happens when you take a species capable of great love and give them a reason for great hatred. Ji-woo opened her desk drawer and pulled out a small photo. It showed Earth from orbit, blue and green and beautiful, taken by her daughter who'd been a photographer on an orbital station. The same daughter who'd died when that station was destroyed in the first hour of the attack. We're coming, Ji-woo whispered to the photo. Not for justice, not for revenge. We're coming because you thought we'd break. And instead, we're going to show you what humans become when you take away our mercy. She put the photo away and returned to her work. There were fleets to organize, weapons to build, and a species to erase from the galaxy. The Cold Forge was working. Humanity's grief had been hammered into something sharp and deadly. Something patient. Something absolutely ruthless. And in 16 months, the Virnath would begin to understand their mistake. The Virnath outpost on Kepler 442b had a garrison of 2,000 soldiers and monitored traffic across 3 star systems. It had stood for 40 years without incident. It took Sung Min's Wraith Squadron 7 minutes to make it disappear. Displacement in 3. Sung Min felt the familiar sensation of reality twisting around him as his fighter phased from quantum space into normal space. One moment, he was nowhere. The next, he was 500 meters from the Virnath command tower. Around him, 24 other fighters materialized in perfect formation, all running silent, all invisible to sensors. Targets acquired, Sungmin said calmly. Execute. They fired together. 25 gravity lances hit the outpost at once. The buildings didn't explode. They simply collapsed inward, metal and concrete and alien bodies all compressed into spheres of crushed matter, the size of beach balls. 7 minutes later, where the outpost had been, there was only empty ground and 25 perfect spheres of compressed material. No survivors, no distress signals. Displacement out, Sung Min ordered. Reality twisted again, and they were gone. This was their 16th mission in 2 months. 16 Virnath installations erased from existence. And the Virnath still didn't know they were under attack. Sung Min landed his fighter back on the carrier hidden in the asteroid field. As he climbed out, he saw Commander Dae-jin waiting for him. Clean operation? Dae-jin asked. Always. Sung Min pulled off his helmet. His face was blank, emotionless. They're starting to notice, though. We intercepted communications. They're confused about why so many outposts are going silent. Good. Confusion is useful. Dae-jin handed him a tablet. Your next target. A supply depot on Wolf 1061C. Larger than the others. 3,000 troops. Sung Min looked at the mission details. When? 2. Tomorrow. Rest now. You've earned it. Sung Min nodded and walked away. Dae-jin watched him go. The young pilot never smiled, never joked, never showed any emotion at all. He was the perfect weapon, precise, efficient, and completely cold. The war had made them all into weapons. On the Virnath border world of Tau Ceti E, Captain Bo-Ra led her intelligence team into the captured communications facility. They'd taken it 6 hours ago using the same tactics. Phase in, eliminate targets, phase out. Except this time, they'd left 4 Virnath alive. Bo-Ra stood over one of them now. The alien was tall, maybe 7 feet, with gray scales and large black eyes. It lay restrained on a table, staring up at her with what might have been fear. You understand English? Bo-Ra asked. The Virnath nodded slowly. Good. I need information about your fleet deployments in the Epsilon Eridani sector. The Virnath's mouth moved. When it spoke, its voice was wet and hissing. You are the ghosts. The ones our people whisper about. We're not ghosts. We're humans. The species you tried to exterminate. The Virnath's eyes widened. Impossible. Earth burned. We saw it. You should all be dead or scattered. Broken. Bo-Ra leaned closer. Let me explain something about humans. We're very good at adapting. You pushed us, so we evolved. You burned our compassion away, so now we're efficient. You wanted to remove weakness from the galaxy? She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. Congratulations. You succeeded. Now answer my question. The Virnath stayed silent. Bo-Ra nodded to her assistant, who activated a device. The Virnath suddenly went rigid, its mouth opening in a silent scream. Your telepathy is a beautiful thing, Bo-Ra said conversationally. You can share feelings across your whole species. Joy, love, happiness. Unfortunately for you, you can also share pain. And we've learned how to amplify it. She let the device run for 5 more seconds, then shut it off. The Virnath collapsed, gasping. The fleet deployments. Tell me. The Virnath told her everything. When Bo-Ra left the facility 3 hours later, she had complete information on Virnath military positions across 7 sectors. She also left all 4 prisoners dead. They knew too much about human capabilities now. It was cleaner this way. In the central command ship, hidden in the Oort cloud of a dead star system, Young-Ho coordinated the broader intelligence operation. He had teams operating on 12 different Virnath worlds now, all gathering information, all causing quiet chaos. "We've successfully planted the false evidence on Virnath Prime 7, one of his officers reported. They now believe Virnath Prime 9 is hoarding resources and not sharing with the Empire. And on 9, they've received fabricated communications suggesting 7 is planning a coup against the central government." Young-ho nodded. "Good. Let them suspect each other. Every resource they spend investigating imaginary conspiracies is a resource they can't spend defending against us." He pulled up a map of Virnath space. Red dots marked outposts that had gone silent. Blue dots showed ongoing human intelligence operations. Green dots indicated targets marked for elimination. There were a lot of green dots. "Sir, we're getting reports of Virnath fleet movements. They're sending a battle group to investigate the silent outposts." "How many ships?" 47. "It's a significant portion of their border defense fleet." Young-ho smiled. "Perfect. Let them find nothing. Let them waste fuel and time investigating empty worlds. And while they're distracted," he highlighted 5 more targets on the map. "We hit these." His officer looked at the targets and went pale. "Sir, those are all breeding colonies. Civilian populations." Young-ho looked at him. His face showed no emotion. "Yes, breeding colonies. Where they raise the next generation of Virnath who will grow up to burn more worlds like they burned Earth." He turned back to the map. "Send the coordinates to our strike teams. I want them eliminated within 48 hours. The officer hesitated. "Do you have a problem with the order?" Young-ho asked quietly. "No, sir. Before the war, I was a teacher. I taught kindergarten. Now, I'm helping plan the deaths of children." Young-ho was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I had a daughter. She was 6 years old. She liked drawing pictures and singing songs. She died when they burned Seoul." He looked at the officer. The Virnath didn't care that she was a child. They didn't care that she'd never hurt anyone. They burned her because she was human. "So yes, we're going to eliminate their children, because those children will grow up to do the same thing to someone else if we don't stop it now." The officer nodded slowly and left to relay the orders. Young-ho sat alone in the intelligence center, surrounded by screens showing Virnath communications, fleet movements, population centers. Somewhere in his mind, a small voice that sounded like his old self whispered that this was wrong, that genocide was never justified, that they were becoming the monsters they hated. He ignored that voice. It belonged to a man who died in Seoul. The person sitting here now was something else. Something colder. Something the galaxy needed. Across Virnath space, human strike teams moved like shadows. They appeared without warning, struck with precision, and vanished before anyone could respond. Outposts disappeared. Supply lines were cut. Communication stations went silent. Breeding colonies were hid in the night. And by morning, there was nothing left but empty buildings. The Virnath command finally began to understand something was wrong. This wasn't equipment failure. This wasn't natural disaster. They were under attack. But by who? And from where? Their sensors showed nothing. Their patrols found nothing. Ships would simply cease to exist, leaving no wreckage, no survivors, no clues. The Virnath called them the Silent Death. Rumors spread through their empire. Ghost ships that could phase through walls. Invisible soldiers who killed without making a sound. An enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, and could never be found or fought. Fear began to spread through the Virnath collective consciousness. Every soldier who died in terror, every civilian who vanished in the night. Their fear rippled through the telepathic network that connected all Virnath. 20 billion individuals all feeling the growing dread that something was hunting them. In his command center on Mars, Dae-jin reviewed the mission reports. 34 successful operations in 3 months. 0 human casualties. Approximately 18,000 Virnath eliminated. Countless more disrupted, confused, and beginning to be afraid. How long until Phase 2? Admiral Jiwoo asked over the communication link. We can begin in 6 weeks. The Ghost Fleet is ready. All crews are trained. We've identified primary targets. And the Virnath? Are they ready for what comes next? And Daejin looked at the intelligence reports, at the intercepted communications, showing Virnath confusion and growing fear. They're starting to understand they made a mistake, he said. But they don't understand how big a mistake. Not yet. They think we're raiders. Pirates. A minor inconvenience. And when do they learn the truth? In 6 weeks, when we stop being silent. When we stop being surgical. When we show them what happens when humanity stops holding back. Daejin's expression was ice cold. They wanted to see us weep. Instead, they're going to watch their entire civilization unravel. One world at a time. And they won't be able to stop it. The Virnath Defense Fleet at Proxima Centauri b never saw it coming. 300 human ships phased into normal space simultaneously, appearing in a perfect sphere around the Virnath forces. The aliens had 87 warships. They'd thought that was enough. It wasn't. Admiral Jiwoo sat in the command chair of her flagship, watching the tactical display. All ships. Fire at will. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. But this wasn't like the battle for Earth. This time, humans had the better technology, the better training, the better weapons. Virnath ships tried to return fire, but human vessels phased in and out of normal space, appearing long enough to fire their gravity lances before vanishing again. One by one, Virnath warships collapsed in on themselves, compressed into dense balls of matter. In 12 minutes, all 87 enemy ships were destroyed. Any survivors? Jiwoo asked. Negative, Admiral. No escape pods, no distress signals. Complete elimination. Jiwoo nodded. Good. Proceed to ground operations. I want every military installation on the surface eliminated within the hour. This was Phase 2. No more hiding. No more surgical strikes. This was open warfare, and humanity was going to show the galaxy what happened when they fought without mercy. On the surface of Proxima Centauri b, Daejin led the ground assault. His forces phased in directly above the Virnath Military Command Center, a massive fortress built into a mountain. Gravity lances, concentrated fire on the entrance, Daejin ordered. The mountain shook as human weapons tore it apart from the inside. Massive chunks of rock collapsed inward, taking the fortress with them. Virnath troops poured out of side entrances, trying to mount a defense. They never had a chance. Human soldiers moved with perfect coordination. They'd trained together for 5 years. They knew each other's movements instinctively. Every shot was placed with precision. Every advance was calculated. The Virnath fought back desperately. They had numbers 3,000 troops against Daejin's 500. But humans had technology, training, and most importantly, they had no fear. They'd already lost everything that mattered. Death was just another mission parameter. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 3,000 Virnath lay dead, and Daejin's forces had lost 12 soldiers. Sir, we're receiving a transmission, his communication officer said. It's from the Virnath. They're asking to surrender. Daejin looked at the Virnath bodies scattered across the battlefield. He thought about Earth burning, about 4 billion dead humans, about children who died crying for parents who couldn't save them. No response, he said. Continue operations. In space, Dr. Hana supervised the deployment of her newest weapon. The human fleet had moved into position around Proxima Centauri itself, the star that gave this system light and warmth. Stellar manipulators are in position, her assistant reported. Ready on your order. Hana looked at the readouts. This weapon had taken 2 years to develop. It used quantum field manipulation to alter a star's fusion process. In simple terms, it could turn a stable sun into an unstable one. Activate the manipulators, she ordered. High above the star's surface, 12 human devices activated simultaneously. Invisible fields reached down into the star's core, disrupting the careful balance of fusion reactions that had kept it stable for billions of years. The star flickered. On the planet below, Virnath civilians looked up at their sun in confusion. It was getting dimmer, and the light was changing color, shifting from yellow toward red. How long until critical instability? Hana asked. 6 hours. At that point, the star will begin expanding. In 12 hours, it will consume the first planet. In 24 hours, this planet. In 48 hours, the entire inner system. Hana nodded. Inform Admiral Ji Woo. We need to complete ground operations and evacuate our forces within 4 hours. And the Virnath population? Not our concern. Below, on the dying world, Daejin received the update. The star was failing. They had 4 hours. Daejin, double time all operations, he ordered. I want every military target eliminated before we leave. His forces moved faster, striking at barracks, weapons, factories, training centers. The Virnath tried to fight back, but they were confused, disorganized. Their telepathic network was overloaded with fear and pain. Every death sent ripples of agony through their collective consciousness. And there were a lot of deaths. Commander Sung Min led his fighter squadron in strafing runs over Virnath troop concentrations. His weapons were precise, efficient. Every shot counted. Every pass left dozens dead. Sung Min, you have incoming fighters, his wingmate warned. I see them. 12 Virnath fighters rose to meet him. They were faster than the ships that had burned Earth. The Virnath had improved their technology over 5 years. But humans had improved more. Sung Min's fighter phased out of normal space just as the enemy fired. The shots passed through empty space where he'd been. He reappeared behind them and fired his gravity lances. 3 enemy fighters compressed into balls of scrap. He phased again, reappeared at a different angle. Fired again. 3 more. Down. The remaining 6 scattered, trying to escape. Sung Min and his squadron hunted them down methodically. In 90 seconds, all 12 were destroyed. Good kill, Daejin's voice came over the radio. Return to carrier. We're evacuating. In 30 minutes, Sung Min took one last look at the planet below. The Virnath were dying down there. Military and civilian. Young and old. All of them dying because their leaders had decided humans were weak. He felt nothing. No satisfaction. No guilt. Just cold emptiness. He turned his fighter toward the carrier and phased out. Across Virnath space, similar scenes played out. Human fleets appeared at 12 major Virnath worlds simultaneously. They destroyed orbital defenses, eliminated ground forces, and then did something the Virnath hadn't expected. They didn't occupy the worlds. They didn't try to conquer them. They simply eliminated all military capability and moved on to the next target, leaving the civilian populations alive but defenseless. It was a calculated decision. Dead Virnath couldn't feel fear. Live ones could, and every Virnath civilian who survived felt the terror of their defenders being wiped out, felt the knowledge that human ships could appear anytime and finish the job. That terror spread through the telepathic network like poison. In the Virnath Imperial Palace on their home world, the Emperor received reports with growing horror. 12 worlds attacked. 17 defensive fleets destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of troops eliminated. And the humans weren't even slowing down. Send them a message, the Emperor ordered. Tell them we want to negotiate. Tell them we'll give them anything they want. Resources, territory, even vassal status. Just make them stop. 1. The message was sent on all frequencies, in all languages. Admiral Ji Woo received it on her flagship. She read it, then looked at her communication officer. Response, Admiral? Ji Woo thought about the message, about the Virnath begging for mercy, about them offering to become servants just to survive. She thought about Earth, About the Virnath broadcast when they'd arrived. Do not resist. It will only make your suffering longer. They hadn't offered terms then. They hadn't wanted to negotiate. They'd just started killing. Send one word, Jiwoo said. Just one word. No. The communication officer looked shocked. Admiral, they're offering complete surrender. They're offering to survive, Jiwoo interrupted. To remain a threat. To potentially do this to someone else in 100 years. Or 1,000. She stood up. We didn't start this war to win territory or make vassals. We started it to make sure the Virnath can never threaten anyone again. Ever. And there's only one way to guarantee that. 10. She turned to her tactical officer. How many Virnath worlds remain? 35, Admiral. 23 colonies. 12 industrial worlds. And our fleet strength? 287 ships operational. We've lost 13 in combat. Acceptable losses. Jiwoo pulled up the strategic map. Here's the new plan. We systematically eliminate every Virnath military asset in their empire. Then we target their industrial capacity, their shipyards, their factories, their resource processing. We burn it all. And their civilian populations? We leave them alive. For now, let them feel what we felt. Let them know helplessness. Let them understand that they exist only because we choose to let them exist. Jiwoo's eyes were cold. And then, when they truly understand what they've done, when the fear has spread through their entire species, then we finish it. In the tactical center, Taeyang prepared his ship for its mission. The Requiem was humanity's largest warship, built specifically to destroy planets. Not with bombs or missiles, but with something much more permanent. The ship carried a quantum cascade weapon. When fired at a star, it would trigger a chain reaction that would make the star go supernova. Everything in the system would be destroyed. Not just planets, but all the asteroids, all the debris, everything. It was the ultimate erasure. Target is the Virnath breeding world in the Kepler 186 system, Taeyang read from his orders. Population, 2 billion. 8% children under breeding age. Mission, complete sterilization of system. His crew looked at him. They all knew what this meant. They were about to kill 2 billion beings, including children who'd had nothing to do with the attack on Earth. Any objections? Taeyang asked. Nobody spoke. Good. Plot course. We launch in 1 hour. As his crew worked, Taeyang thought about his family. His mother, who'd been a doctor in Tokyo. His father, who'd taught history. His younger brother, who'd been 12 years old and wanted to be an astronaut. All dead in the first day of the attack. The Virnath hadn't cared that they were innocent. Hadn't cared that they'd never hurt anyone. They died because they were human. Now Virnath children would die because they were Virnath. Sir, course plotted. Ready to jump. Take us out, Taeyang ordered. The Requiem phased into quantum space, heading toward Kepler 186, toward 2 billion lives that had less than 24 hours left. The unraveling had begun. 10 years after Earth burned, only one Virnath system remained. Admiral Jiwoo stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the tactical display. 1 star, 1 planet, 4 million, Virnath. All that was left of an empire that had once controlled 47 star systems and ruled over 20 billion beings. All ships report ready, Admiral, her tactical officer said. Jiwoo looked at the planet below. She'd spent 10 years systematically destroying the Virnath. It had been methodical, precise, and absolutely ruthless. Other alien species had watched with growing horror. They'd monitored the human advance, seen the efficiency of the destruction, and learned a terrifying lesson. Humans were patient, adaptable, and when pushed far enough, completely merciless. Several alien governments had sent messages to Jiwoo, asking her to stop, offering to mediate, suggesting war crimes, tribunals. She'd ignored them all. This wasn't about justice or revenge anymore. This was about sending a message that would last 10,000 years. Humanity was not weak. Prepare ground forces, Jiwoo ordered. General Kim, you have command of the surface operation. On a transport ship, Dae-jin gathered his troops. He was 52 now, though he looked older. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, and a coldness that never left his expression. This is the final operation, he told his soldiers. On that planet below are the last Virnath. When we're done, their species will be extinct. Completely erased. No survivors. No mercy. No hesitation. His troops, 5,000 of humanity's best soldiers, simply nodded. They'd been doing this for 10 years. They knew how to eliminate targets efficiently. One more thing, Dae-jin said. Before we kill them, we're going to show them something. We're going to make sure they understand exactly why this is happening. Then we finish it. Move out. The transports launched. On the surface, in what remained of the Virnath capital city, the survivors huddled together. They knew the humans were coming. They'd known for months. There was nowhere left to run. The emperor, old now, his scales gray with age, stood in his palace surrounded by his last advisors. Through their telepathic network, he could feel the fear of every remaining Virnath. 4 million minds, all terrified, all knowing death was coming. How long? He asked. The human fleet is in orbit. Transport ships are launching. Maybe 2 hours. The emperor closed his eyes. 10 years ago, we were the masters of 47 worlds. We had fleets that could darken the stars. We thought we were invincible. We were wrong about the humans. One of his advisors said quietly. No. We were right about them. The emperor opened his eyes. They are emotional. They do cry. They do feel compassion and love, and all the soft things we thought were weaknesses. He looked at his council. We just never imagined what would happen if we made them stop feeling those things. We burned away their mercy and left only cold efficiency. We did this to ourselves. Human ships landed across the planet. Dae-jin's forces deployed, surrounding the capital city. They didn't rush. They didn't attack immediately. They simply formed a perimeter and waited. Then massive holographic projectors activated. Every Virnath in the city could see the images floating in the sky above them. Earth, blue and green and beautiful. Then, Earth burning. Cities exploding. Oceans boiling. Atmosphere on fire. The images showed it all in horrific detail. Then came images of the dead. Billions of human faces. Men, women, children, all dead. All killed in 72 hours, because the Virnath had decided they were weak. The Virnath population watched, and through their telepathic network, they felt the weight of what they'd done. 4 million minds experiencing 4 billion deaths. Dr. Hana watched from the command ship. She'd designed this, not a weapon this time, but a final message. Make them understand. Make them feel the weight of their mistake before they died. How long do we run the broadcast? Her assistant asked. Until every Virnath has seen it. Until they truly understand. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of showing the Virnath what they'd done. Not just numbers. Not just statistics. But individual faces. Individual deaths. The images cycled endlessly. A child's face. A name. A brief biography of who they'd been. 4 billion lives, reduced to brief flashes of memory. Through their telepathic network, the Virnath felt the accumulated weight of all that death. 4 million beings, experiencing collective guilt for 4 billion murders. When the broadcast finally ended, Dae-jin gave the order. Begin ground assault. His forces moved in. The Virnath didn't fight back. They were too broken. Too overwhelmed by the guilt and horror of what they'd felt. They just waited for death. It came quickly. Commander Sung-min flew his fighter over the city, watching the ground forces work. He was 32 now. He'd spent 15 years, half his life, fighting Virnath. He'd destroyed hundreds of their ships, killed thousands of their soldiers, watched dozens of their worlds burn. He wondered if he should feel something. Satisfaction. maybe, or guilt, but there was only emptiness. Sung Min, you have one last mission. Daejin's voice came over the radio. The Imperial Palace. The Emperor is still alive. He's refusing to evacuate. Orders? Confirm the kill personally, then return to fleet. Sung Min flew to the palace. He landed his fighter in the courtyard, climbed out, and walked inside. The palace was empty, except for one room at the center. The Emperor sat on his throne, a simple chair. Really, nothing grand. He looked old and tired. You're here to kill me, the Emperor said in English. Yes, I won't beg. We don't deserve mercy. Sung Min raised his weapon. No, you don't. Before you fire, tell me, was it worth it? Destroying us? Does it heal your pain? Sung Min thought about his family, about his mother and father and sister, about his girlfriend, who'd promised to wait for him to finish training school. All dead for 15 years. No, he said honestly. It doesn't bring them back. Nothing will. But it guarantees you can never do this to anyone else. It guarantees that when other species look at Earth, they'll see what happens when you push humanity too far. He aimed carefully. You wanted to teach the galaxy that weak species should make room for strong ones. Instead, you taught them that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. And we chose to stop giving it to you. He fired. The Emperor died instantly. Sung Min walked back to his fighter, stepped over Virnath bodies in the courtyard, and flew back to the fleet. Below, Daejin's forces completed their mission. 4 million Virnath, all eliminated in 6 hours. The last of their species. Gone. Sir, the surface is clear, his second-in-command reported. No survivors. No one left alive. Daejin nodded. He felt tired. Not physically, though, he was that too, but tired in his soul. 10 years of killing. 10 years of watching worlds burn. 10 years of being the cold, efficient monster that humanity had needed him to be. Return to ships, he ordered. We're done here. As his forces evacuated, Young-ho activated the final weapon. It was his design. A quantum cascade that would make the Virnath star go supernova. Not just destroying the planet, but erasing the entire system. No ruins to study. No graves to visit. Just empty space where the Virnath had been. Cascade armed and ready, he reported to Admiral Jiwoo. Any regrets? She asked him. Young-ho thought about his daughter, about watching her run toward the shelter, about that being the last time he'd seen her alive. She'd be 21 now if she'd lived. Maybe in university. Maybe with a boyfriend. Maybe starting her own life. Instead, she was dust in Seoul's ruins. No regrets, he said. Fire the weapon. The cascade launched. It would take 12 hours to reach the star's core and trigger the supernova. Plenty of time for the human fleet to retreat to a safe distance. The fleet gathered at the edge of the system. 300 ships, 50,000 personnel. All that remained of humanity's military might after 10 years of war. Admiral Jiwoo stood on her bridge, watching the countdown. Around her, the crew worked quietly, efficiently. They'd been doing this for a decade. They knew their jobs. 10 minutes to cascade activation, someone announced. Jiwoo activated her communication system, broadcasting to every ship in the fleet. In 10 minutes, the Virnath species will cease to exist. We will have erased them so completely that in 1,000 years, other species might not even believe they ever existed. We did this, not from evil, but from necessity. Not from cruelty, but from cold calculation. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The Virnath made a mistake. They looked at humanity's capacity for compassion and love and thought it made us weak. They never understood that our ability to feel strongly is what makes us dangerous. We don't just fight for survival. We fight for meaning, for purpose, for the memory of those we loved. 5 minutes. When we return to human space, We will begin rebuilding Earth. We will restore what was burned. We will mourn those we lost. We will allow ourselves to feel again. Jiwoo's voice hardened. But we will also remember this. We will remember that when pushed beyond the breaking point, when our mercy was taken for weakness, we became capable of complete extinction. And we will make sure the galaxy never forgets it either. 1 minute. The fleet watched in silence as the countdown reached 0. Deep in the Virnath star, the quantum cascade triggered. The star's fusion processes went critical. In seconds, the star began to expand, growing brighter and hotter. On what remained of the Virnath homeworld, the last bodies of the last members of their species burned in nuclear fire as their sun consumed the planet. The star continued to expand, swallowing the other planets in the system. Then it collapsed and exploded outward in a supernova that could be seen from 100 light-years away. Where the Virnath had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of gas and radiation. Total extinction. Complete erasure. Dr. Hanna watched it happen and thought about the research facility in Geneva where she'd worked before the war, about her colleagues who died there, about the work they'd been doing to push humanity toward the stars. "We finished your work," she whispered to the dead. "Not the way we planned. But we reached the stars, and we made sure everyone out here knows what happens when they threaten us." The human fleet turned away from the supernova and began the long journey back to human space. 20 years later, Captain Dae-jin, retired now, and living in the rebuilt city of Seoul, walked through a park with his grandchildren. Earth was green again. The cities were restored. Life had returned. The children played, laughing and chasing each other. They didn't know about the war. They'd been born after. They'd grown up in peace. Dae-jin watched them and allowed himself to smile. It felt strange. He hadn't smiled much in 30 years. "Grandfather, is it true you fought aliens?" his grandson asked. "Yes. A long time ago." "Or no. Did you win?" Dae-jin thought about that question. About 4 billion dead humans. About 20 billion dead Virnath. About the 10 years spent becoming a monster so that future generations wouldn't have to. "Yes," he said finally. "We won. Will there be more wars? Maybe. Probably." But the galaxy learned something from what happened to the Virnath. They learned that humanity can be kind, compassionate, and peaceful. But they also learned what happens when you mistake our kindness for weakness. His grandson looked confused. "What happens?" Dae-jin knelt down, looking his grandson in the eye. "We stop being kind. And when humans stop being kind, we become the most dangerous species in the galaxy." He stood up, watching the children play in the restored park, in the rebuilt city, on the reborn Earth. Above, in the sky, the stars shone peacefully. But scattered through that sky, in places where star charts showed empty space, were new nebulas. Beautiful clouds of gas and dust that would someday form new stars. Each one marked where a Virnath world had been. 47 markers spread across the galaxy. 47 reminders of what humanity was capable of when pushed too far. The galaxy would remember. For 10,000 years or more, other species would see those nebulas and remember the species that had tried to burn humanity, and the humans who had erased them in return. It was the most expensive lesson in galactic history, but it was effective. Nobody threatened Earth again.